So, how do bands promote their music in an age when everything is streamed? Let's talk to documentary filmmaker Bob Rose about his film Instaband. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am alive and doing well today, as I hope you are. I hope you're having a great day as you're listening to this or watching this. But I know that we all have a lot more time to watch movies. I am addicted to everything that's on streaming now, and I'm catching up on so many good independent films, including independent docs, tend to be my personal favorite. So I'm excited to talk to Bob Rose about his documentary Instaband, which is really about how bands survive in a day where everything is streaming, right? Bob, like if you're a band, I mean, are you even making money on the music these days?
Really, you're not. I mean, if you're not Taylor Swift or Kanye or somebody that matter, you're not making most of your money off of your streaming. You're having to get it from other directions, and you've seen that. Everybody's seen that, but they haven't seen it from the artist perspective. You know, it's like, so where are they making their living now that people aren't buying these super overpriced $19.99 CDs that we've all spent so many on? You know, like, what do they do now? So that's kind of the premise, and that's where we start with the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't familiar with all of the musicians that you profiled in your documentary, but I don't know, I found it really interesting because I feel like while the focus of your documentary is about how bands are making money on other ways to make money, in an age where everything is streamed for free, right?
Right.
This could apply to all types of different artists. This could apply to filmmakers. This can apply to all types of artists who've been impacted by the digital revolution. But could you detail for me what are some of the things that you discovered from some of the artists and how they're able to cobble together a living? Because I think the real goal for any artist, whether you're a filmmaker or a musician, you want to make a living on your art, even if it's just like a basic, I can pay the rent and I can pay my bills. That's all I want. I just want to do my art and pay my bills. What are some of the things that you discovered that musicians were doing?
Well, first off, as a filmmaker, that was one of the main things that drew me to this project was that we are in this world where people aren't buying the Blu-rays. And I used to make a ton of money just on DVD duplication. All that's gone now. So I resonated with the material from that standpoint. But as I started to dig into it, there were some pretty interesting ways that these artists are making a living. And you know what really kind of, as we started to dig in, what I noticed was the mid-tier artists, which are the ones we kind of focus on, the ones that are doing shows, but they're not doing stadiums. Some of them are working, some of them are just getting out, but they are greatly impacted on whether people buy music. So to see some of the things they were doing was pretty amazing. I think the main one that really I didn't think about, ironically, in the beginning, that really stood out for me is sync licensing. So one of the artists, Sam Tenez, he makes almost all of his money off of sync licensing, getting it in movies and TV shows, NFL promos, what have you. And that actually drives his whole career. So he gets millions of streams on Spotify, and he does it because it was in some commercial or something of that sort. And of course, your obvious things, which is a big thing happening right now since we stopped filming the movie, is your live shows. So the major thing for anybody in music is making money off the live shows. And so the weird rub we're in now is like that's not happening either. So what do they do there? You know, so obviously you get into your merchandising, and anytime you can get some collaboration or influence. I mean, it's all a hustle, man. It's all a hustle. And that's the thing that really attracted me to telling this story from these mid-tier artists, is that they are the one hustling it. There's not somebody else who's like their manager who's like, okay, you need to go on social media and do this. I mean, they're pretty much doing this all themselves, which I resonated with as well, because that's how we make our films.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be a starving artist. I mean, what artist at the beginning of the career isn't starving? It's another thing to be a starving artist during a pandemic and during like all the chaos that is our that is are the current events. I mean, so how do you cobble together a living? One of the things I found interesting is that most of the musicians tended to use Instagram, which I think ties into the name of your documentary, Instaband. Um, a lot of them use a lot of them use Instagram to build following, to get people, to get people excited about different events that they're putting on. Can you outline for me kind of what you learned about the most effective ways to use Instagram to promote your art?
Yeah, I think for the artists and what I've noticed, and even on my own standpoint with the projects we put out, it's all about personal connection. So for every cool picture and like here's this behind the scenes moment, what I found is most successful for these artists is the true transparency, because we all want that now. So they're super transparent. We have one artist, Charlotte Sands. I mean, she could have the best look picture in the world and she's still kind of poking fun at it and having fun with the picture. But aside from that, is these guys live in their DMs. I mean, they respond and talk to every single person who messages them. And I think that sort of commitment really pays off in the long run. And when I see some of the concerts that I filmed, I see these people in the front row. These are those people. These are those people that are in the DM, and they're like fans for life. They're going to buy all your merch, and then that kind of leads into to the next person, because they see you commenting and how much this artist is amazing. They're like, wow, like, okay, maybe I should listen to them too. So it's funny because it's like the new age word of mouth is really it, man. I mean, back in the day, even before places like Film Threat, you had a couple of movie review sites, but nothing was better for most people than word of mouth. So people are using Instagram in that fashion to promote themselves. But, we all see on these Instagram stories how important they are for these artists, because that's really the window into their life. And I think it pays off for them that way.
Well, I mean, are we seeing sort of a shift and a move from your corporate artist? The whole thing. There's a really great scene in your documentary, or there's one of the musicians that you follow gets signed to a major label. And it's like a big deal. And she's so excited with her band and they're getting signed to the major label. Then she goes through the math and explains to you basically how she didn't make any money and it really didn't move the needle in terms of her situation in life. It's shocking. And I think that people think that the dream is just to sign and all your problems are gone. And I think the reality is, and I just know this from having been around, seeing so many artists grow in their careers, is that you got to be in control. You got to be in. I really think that having control over your own destiny is ideal, whether you do eventually partner with a large corporate entity or not. I mean, and I have worked for big companies. I've also done a lot of projects on my own without the help of big companies. I think that there are pluses and minuses to both. I'm it's nice to have some corporate budget dollars, but I do think when it comes to emerging artists that it's absolutely critical to sort of, for as long as time as possible, build up your quote value as a stock, so to speak, value as an artist, so that you've built this audience where you may or may not you don't have to sign the big corporate deal. Can you elaborate and talk a little bit about that sort of, being in control of your own destiny as an artist versus that corporate world that you showed so well in the doc? You need to see the doc. And I'm sorry, I'm spacing on the name of the band and the woman. What was the band?
Her name is Her. She goes by the infamous Her, because obviously
right.
There's another one as well. And Sam Tenez went through a similar situation as well. And the way his story resolved was interesting, because he came out of the gate talking about his independence and how he was signed to a label and how that really didn't work out. I mean, they're just sitting in the studio and they're not for a couple of years and not really making any money. Well, he made his own following through sync licensing and doing his own thing with his own management team. And then he got a success with that, to whereas now Warner Brothers is coming in and helping him out, but he's now doing it on his own terms. And I think that's what happens when you build enough of your own following, is that you can kind of dictate your own terms. Because record labels today, they just want somebody to come in the door that's ready to go. You can't be on, I mean, you got to have your package together, and they're expecting that. You know, the same way as a filmmaker, you know, we don't have tons of people out pumping out all our stuff. We're having to do a lot of it ourselves. It's all sweat equity these days. And what I've found through doing the movie is that there isn't one way. There isn't the starving artist anymore. There isn't the, I mean, there is, but it's not just starving artists. It's not just, oh, I'm selling out stadiums. There's this whole middle ground, and that's where most people fall. And when you get into that and you kind of build your own following, you can cherry pick what you want. You don't have to no longer like, oh, I'm just with, you know, this record label and they just take care of everything. No, they could just take care of this part. And some people are just using them as kind of a management team, but then they're also still doing their own stuff over here. So there's just a lot of options, and being quite honest with you, the power is in the music, in the artist's hands now, because these record labels are just, they've fallen left and right ever since, I mean, 2009, 10, ever since Napster. They've just been kind of going away. They will take what they can get. And record labels, they still have a lot to bring to the table. But you have to read your paperwork and keep as much control as you can. And that applies to any creator, not just music.
That's, you know, it's interesting because here you are, you're the filmmaker, and in a way you're using a lot of the same tools and things that were outlined in the documentary you made to promote your documentary. It's kind of, it's pretty interesting. So what are the big takeaways that you learned? I almost feel like your documentary could be a documentary series, because I mean, you do a little wrap up at the end where you do get to see kind of where everyone is, which I really like. But I feel like this is an ongoing conversation about, and you open up like a whole can of worms of like, how do artists survive today? Knowing that they have all the tools, but have to develop those skills. How do they avoid that corporate beast coming in and then just sort of, overproducing, over managing? You see it with, especially with music and bands, where the band's first album is great and the second album is never as good because it's always overproduced or overnoted or too many cooks, or do you know what I'm saying? Like how do artists avoid that, and how do they have kind of a long-term career? I'm sorry, Matt. I'm just so I was so enamored with your doc. One of the artists that I look to, she's not in your documentary, but I've always loved, is Aimee Mann. Mm-hmm. And Aimee Mann, who had a big corporate deal with her band Till Tuesday. Then she left that deal. She couldn't make music for a long time. Then she started her own label and did her own thing. She's got a smaller audience, but makes more money, gets bigger piece of the pie. And she's in a book that I would recommend if I could throw out. I know we're talking about your doc. There's a book called The Tenacity of the Cockroach. The Tenacity of the Cockroach is about artists, musicians, filmmakers, all artists who decided to take control of their own destiny. And your movie talks about that. But can you elaborate more on that, feeding the corporate beast, avoiding it, and then just sort of making your own career path? Sure.
Well, first off, let me mention something you said about this being an ongoing thing, especially, well, first off, this is a point in history. This is a part in music history. It's the biggest shift that has happened since the beginning of the music industry, like way back in, when big record labels were happening in the Elvis days. And this is the biggest shift that's ever happened. And so I think it's important to note that this is probably something that students will be learning about in the future. But it's also, we're in the middle of that curve right now. This hasn't resolved. And now, with Corona happening and artists not able to make music or go out and perform, and who knows how long that's going to last, this is intended to be a series. And I think there will be an Instaband 2 or an Instaband the series that keeps posing this question, because every day, and from the moment of filming I stopped filming to now it's a completely 180 just because of Corona. So that aside, I think it's an evolving change. But for artists nowadays, and kind of moving forward, first off, to maintain as much control as possible, you got to have great music. I mean, that's first and foremost. We just push that to the side. We're just assuming you're an amazing artist. So, aside from that, you can't, and this is all creators, you can't be the quiet cook in the kitchen anymore. You have to put yourself out there, or at least put some sort of branding or image out there. Branding is just so important. People don't want to just deal with your music. They want to deal with your whole universe. So I think you have to put as much importance, I would say, on the branding and your social, almost as much as you do on your music. And the good news about that is they don't happen at the same time. So, but you also have to evolve. As we've seen through this virus, we've seen artists evolve. We've all seen live Zoom concerts at this point with tip jars on the bottom. I mean, artists are evolving and doing what they have to do to make their living, and you have to do it as well. In order, if it's like anything, you gotta keep it up with it, or you're gonna get left behind. And I think that's the thing. You can't learn one thing and be done.
I'm excited that you kind of announced an exclusive. There's going to be an Instaband too.
Yes,
I mean, it's going to be a series.
Okay, this is a little joke here, but the joke around the office is an Instaband 2 Corona Boogaloo.
Oh no! Oh man. Well, I hope you continue to do it, because the questions you ask are huge. They're constantly evolving, and it's a really amazing documentary. And I actually want to check out what is it? The Infamous Her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, her story was, I mean, there's a lot of great stories. Hers was really fascinating because she is no BS. I really love how she laid out her big corporate deal and then actually what it really meant. So fantastic. Bob Rose, I want to thank you for coming on the Film Threat podcast today. I also want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. If you're an artist, a filmmaker, you need to use, and you're in a band, you want to make you want to use a music video, storyblocks.com. If you go to storyblocks.com/film threat, you'll get a deal on tools for video, cleared music, all sorts of special effects tools. Storyblocks.com/film threat. We want to thank them because we wouldn't be doing this podcast without their help. Bob, thank you for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here, man.
All right, take care.
Awesome.